Jim Dandy here. Got another CD here I made many years ago from Vaccination Tracts, book 1877. This is the deaths from smallpox caused by the vaccination by Garth Wilkerson, medical doctor. This is the stuff that they don't want you to know about and the lies that smallpox was wiped out. So let me play this. This is 52 minutes long, by the way. We'll put it on. This chapter is from the book Vaccination Tracts by Garth Wilkerson, medical doctor, from 1877. And it's the cases of disease, suffering, and death resulting from vaccination. What I'm going to read is a number of cases of people that died or became very sick after the smallpox vaccine. I'm going to take the time to do this, even though it may be redundant, simply because you need to understand that many, many people died from the smallpox vaccination. And in those days, any death certificates that they had, the people were honest enough to declare the cause of death, whereas today they lie, they cover it up, they give excuses and alibis. You're just not going to get the truth. So this will give you a good idea. And there are many, many books out there that I don't have. I have several of the old books, but there are many more that confirm and have more cases confirming death from vaccination of smallpox and diseases caused by the smallpox vaccination. But here we go, and I quote, "The following cases of injury and death produced by vaccination were collected in one town in a few days for the Reverend W. Hume Rothery, then of Middleton, Manchester, with a view to their presentation as evidence before the Committee of the House of Commons, but which that committee refused to receive." And that ought to tell you something. They refuse to listen to the truth today, too, don't they? Martha Alice Jackson, daughter of James Jackson, of Stonyfield, Rockdale, vaccinated when 3 weeks old by Dr. Booth, the public vaccinator. About 9 days after vaccination, the child broke out of a most loathsome disease designated by the medical attendant, Dr. Morris, as a very bad case of syphilis, caused, the medical man said, by vaccination. It suffered dreadfully until 7 months old and then died a most pitiful object. Think if this was your own child and you went through that, and many of you are going through that today with different diseases caused by vaccinations. Robert Henry Fielding, son of Thomas Fielding, Radcliffe Street in Rockdale, was vaccinated when 4 months old. The arm immediately began to swell towards the fingers, then across the chest and down the right arm, which was very much swollen, and after death, the arm burst. The child died 1 month after vaccination. The medical attendant told the father that vaccination had killed the child. It died January of 1870. Martha Cudworth, daughter of James Cudworth, the Alley Lower Place, Rockdale, was vaccinated December of 1869. The arm became much swollen and inflamed, and the child died in less than 3 weeks from the time it was vaccinated. Dr. Crompton, the medical attendant, said that vaccination was the cause of its death. It was vaccinated by Dr. Booth, the public vaccinator. Joseph Chadwick, son of John Chadwick, Hartley's Buildings, Burcell, Rockdale, was vaccinated when 4 months old and died 4 weeks after being vaccinated, was a fine and perfectly healthy child previous to being vaccinated. The arm of the child healed up in a fortnight after being vaccinated, then broke out again, became very much swollen and inflamed, after which convulsions set in, and the child died December 31st, 1867. It was vaccinated by Dr. Morse. Notice that they're telling you here that convulsions are a result of vaccinations. Syphilis is a result of vaccinations. and you're going to find out many more diseases were caused by vaccinations. But I want to explain something to you. These are not different diseases caused by different germs. They are different conditions that resulted from the weakness of a particular child's system. In other words, because you have a symptom and they call it syphilis, or you have a symptom and they call it smallpox, or you have a symptom and they call it another disease, does not mean it's different diseases. The cause is the same. The conditions are different according to the organ or the part of the body that this poison mostly went to, where it caused the weakest chain in the link to break down. Edwin Kershaw, son of Emmanuel Kershaw of Greenhall Buildings, Oldham Road, Rockdale, was vaccinated when 5 months old in January of 1870 and died a fortnight after being vaccinated. The arm of the child was so bad that it began to mortify and burst before death. It was a most deplorable object. Dr. Booth, the public vaccinator, performed the operation of vaccination. Dr. Morris, the medical attendant, certified the cause of death as being vaccination. This is to certify that I, John Ashworth of Union Street, Rockdale, mechanic, had a child named Daniel Ashworth, which said child was vaccinated by the public vaccinator in December of 1869 at the age of 12 weeks. The next day, erysipelas inflammation took place, which in 14 days terminated in death. And there is another set of symptoms called erysipelas caused by the same vaccination, the same cause. Rockdale, March 11, 1871. This is to certify that I, John Robert Whitham, had a child called Sarah Ellen Whitham, who was vaccinated in December of 1869 at the age of 14 weeks by the public vaccinator for the borough of Rockdale. Immediately after vaccination, erysipelas inflammation set in, which terminated in death on the 8th day of vaccination. The case was certified by Dr. Wood, erysipelas from vaccination. Solomon Crabtree of Sand Place, Elbert Street, had a child named Hannah Crabtree, vaccinated by the public vaccinator for the borough of Rockdale at 11 weeks old. The day after the operation, convulsions seized the child. It broke out in sores on the arms and other parts of the body and died in 19 days after the operation. The child was vaccinated in January of 1870. All of the above cases were declared and attested before G.L. Ashworth, ESQ, Mayor of Rockdale on March 13, 1871. Further cases collected for the Reverend William Hume Rothery and all solemnly attested before James Butterworth, J.P., County of Lancaster, March 18, 1871. Joseph Taylor, my child was vaccinated when 13 weeks old. In 2 weeks it was dead. After vaccination it was seized with convulsions which continued until death. Richard Matthew, my child was vaccinated at the same time as the above and with the same kind of matter. It also was seized with convulsions which continued until death. After death it went as black as coal. It was such a mass of corruption that the burial suit had to be thrown over it instead of being put on. We believe that vaccination killed them both. Signed, Joseph Taylor and Richard Matthew. Small Bridge, March 12, 1871. Of course, our doctors would say that they already had the germ inside of them, right? Just this is where they get the crap that they used with the polio fiasco in the 1950s, by the way. They knew all this. Sarah Ann Royds was vaccinated when about 3 years of age. Before vaccination was a fine, healthy child. After, its eyes swelled up and it was troubled with fits for 9 days. It completely lost all power of speech, and we had to carry her up and down like a newborn child. She had an abscess in her head, which had to be lanced. She has never been well since. Her memory is destroyed for life, and she is now 23 years of age. We, the parents, believe that vaccination has been the cause of our daughter's imbecility. Signed, Abraham Reuters, Small Bridge, March 12, 1871. And so here you have a case of mental defectiveness being caused. And why not? The poison simply went to the brain and poisoned the brain cells. It's that simple. I, Sarah Whipp, do hereby testify that my child, Betty Whipp, was vaccinated when about 3 years old. Before vaccination, it was a fine, healthy child, but immediately after vaccination, it broke out of erysipelas all over its body. Afterwards, it also suffered from sore eyes. In short, after vaccination, it was always sick. And at the age of 12 years, it died of smallpox. Yours truly, signed Sarah Whiff, Brickfield Road, Rockdale, March 11th, 1871. Mary Jackson, my child was a strong, healthy child before vaccination. After vaccination, it broke out in boils in the left leg and will be a cripple as long as it lives. Mary Jackson, Brickfield, March 12, 1871. Betty Fitton, daughter of Robert Fitton, parents healthy, child also previous to vaccination. After vaccination, its arms were badly inflamed. Inflammation of the arms was succeeded in inflammation of the chest, of which it died after 11 weeks of sickness. Signed, Robert Fitton, J.N.O., Robert and Mary Fitton, Small Bridge, March 12, 1871. Kenningdale, Robert Cook, son of the vicar of Small Bridge, vaccinated in infancy, revaccinated on entering the civil service at age 23, and in 3 weeks after was afflicted with smallpox in the confluent form. Signed, R.K. Cook. And there they're telling you that this disease can cause the smallpox itself, which these people claim, prevented smallpox. Once again, folks, this is isopathy, the stupid belief that the product of disease prevents disease when they know, in fact, it causes disease. Ernest Holt, son of John Holt, was vaccinated when 8 months old. Before vaccination, was very healthy. It had been afflicted with erysipelas ever since. At present, its back is covered with skin eruptions. Ever since vaccination, it has been taking sarsaparilla. It is now 3 years of age. John and Mary Holt. John Riley, son of Hugh Riley, parents healthy, child also before vaccination, was vaccinated when 15 weeks old. Immediately, it was covered all over with a rash. It began to swell and inflame, first in the arm, then in the chest. Its whole body seemed to be filled with corruption. Just before it died, both of its thumbs and one finger burst open. It died 15 days after the operation. We, the parents, believe, nay, are sure, that vaccination killed our child. Father Hugh Riley, Sarah Ann Riley, March 11, 1871. Now we have cases from other sources. From a Leeds newspaper, August of 1872. I had a sweet little boy, sir. He was only 4 months old when he had to be vaccinated. I took him to the station to be done. See, they had vaccination stations then. Now they call them schools. I told the doctor I could not bide to see him cut, so he savagely took him out of my arms and gave him to another woman to hold while he did it. The poor thing cried, frightened like, and when the doctor gave him back to me, I shall never forget his look. He seemed to say to me, "Mother, what did you let him do that for?" I took him home. He seemed smitten from that very hour. He never looked up again, and he died in a dreadful agony in less than 6 weeks. I see that look now, and I shall see it as long as I live. My child, Sam, age 7 months, a fine, healthy boy from birth, was vaccinated on the 9th of April, and after the operation became unwell, as I was given to understand was usually the case. Sounds like today, right? But in 10 days, the child's arm commenced to swell. Also, the left side down to the foot turned black, where a nasty sore formed and burst. And the arm where vaccinated was much discolored and eat away, forming a hole where the bone and sinew of the arm could be seen. And finally, after 3 weeks of intense suffering, died on the 4th of May. My child, as the neighbors can testify, was sound and healthy up to this beastly and disgusting operation. It had been attended by 2 medical men, and I challenged them to refute my assertion, which is simply and sorrowfully this: vaccination killed my child. Is it not time inquests were held upon the cases and evidence taken, so that they who impose fines and imprisonment may know what disease and deaths they are causing in the country? Simon Denton, Central Street, Dewsbury, May 8th, 1872. And you know what? I repeat, let me find that. I say this about today. Is it not time inquests were held upon these cases of autism and all these other diseases that children are getting from blood poisoning vaccinations? Folks, it is time. You need to start demanding that these cases be investigated. 5 fatal cases reported by W. Young, pharmaceutical chemist, 8 Need Terrace, Harrow Road, London. Number 1, death caused by vaccination. The first-born infant daughter of Miss Lawrence of 15 Netley Street, Harrow Road, a fine, healthy child, was vaccinated at the age of 5 months on the 14th of November, 1870, by Dr. Westacott of Paddington. In a few days, violent inflammation of the arm began to show itself, followed by erysipelas. The child suffered greatly and died on the 15th day after vaccination. The certificate of death was thus worded: irritation from vaccination 9 days, erysipelas 6 days. The body was seen by Mr. Young, Mr. R.B. Gibbs, and others. The arm was apparently mortified from the elbow to the shoulder. Death from vaccination. The child of Charles Collier of 19 North Wharf Road, Paddington, was vaccinated by Dr. Harper on the 23rd of March, 1868. It began to sicken a week after and died on the 16th April of erysipelas, which extended all over the body, even to the toes. Its age at death was 4 months. Previous to vaccination, it further states it was a healthy child. The certificate of death given by Dr. Harper was death from erysipelas. Wish I knew how to pronounce that word, folks. Jaundice following vaccination and then death. Here's another disease. Died December 10th, 1871, after much suffering, Robert Arthur Bathelder of 59 Clarendon Street, Harrow Road, age 4 months. The child was vaccinated by Dr. Graves on the 27th November, being then in perfect health. 7 days after, the skin and countenance became yellow. The matter which came from the vaccination punctures was deep yellow and stained the linen. The child was in great agony and lost its voice from incessant screaming, getting no sleep day or night. High-pitched screaming, that's normal, they tell you today, right? This is back, what, over 100 years ago? 200 years ago? I don't know. Doesn't matter. He was evidently a case of jaundice produced by PYAEMIA, or blood poisoning, a direct result of vaccination. The infant daughter of Mr. Burroughs of Chippenmews, Harrow Road, died on the 19th of September of 1871. You know, I might interject. Nobody will know I'm making this stuff up because I can't even pronounce half these words. When vaccinated 2 months previously, it was a plump, healthy child. Immediately after vaccination, its sufferings commenced and only ended with death. The vaccine punctures never healed. The auxiliary glands were swollen and inflamed, and a constant diarrhea wore out the child. On the arm, where the citruses ought to be, there existed a large and deep evacuated sore, of the bottom of which the bone was visible. Dr. Pierce and Mr. Young saw this case. You know, an interesting point here is you have to understand when these kids are poisoned like this, and they have these eruptions on their arms and their body, and they're having diarrhea. This is God's way. This is nature's way of trying to eliminate poison. The only problem was that the system wasn't strong enough to eliminate all the poison they put in this baby. Died January 6, 1872 in convulsions of erysipelas caused by and immediately following vaccination. The firstborn infant daughter of Mrs. Moyes, 3 Modena Terrace, Kensal, Newtown, age 4 months. This was a dreadful case, and great efforts were made to induce the coroner, Dr. Langster, to hold an inquest, but he refused to do so. You see the cover-up that's been going on for so long? It's got to be stopped, folks, and we're the only ones who are going to be able to stop it. And that's not by being meek about this situation. Here we go with vaccinal syphilis. Dr. Crawford of Walsall reports in the Medical Times of May 7th, 1873. A.W., born April 1863 of healthy parents who are still alive and well. He is the fourth child of 7 in the family, the rest all being in robust health. He was quite well until vaccinated. 4 weeks after an eruption appeared on the forehead and subsequently on the extremities in the body, and it has continued from year to year ever since. He still manifests the appearance of syphilis, and this year has suffered more than usual from large blotches of a copper color on the vaccinated arm. Statement of Henry Guest, Wood Street, Middleton. We had smallpox in our family about 3 years ago, which began first with those vaccinated and spread until 4 others had it. We had also 2 unvaccinated who took it, though one of those had it so very mildly that he was not confined to his room during the whole time, while some of those vaccinated had it very badly and were insensible. I am thoroughly persuaded that vaccination does not prevent or modify smallpox, while it causes diseases that I have too often witnessed. Signed, Henry Geist, 30th of September, 1872. We had 5 children down with smallpox some years ago who were attended by Dr. Knott, 4 of whom have been vaccinated, and strange to say, they are all much pitted to this day, except the one not vaccinated, who has only 1 spot to be seen, and even when going through the disease, some of those vaccinated had it very badly and were blind, while that unvaccinated had it very mildly. Signed, Isaac Stiles, 30th of September, 1872. On May the 2nd, 1873, Mr. Bull brought before the Walsall guardians of a child he had been compelled by them to have vaccinated, having been fined, including cost. Explaining in vain that he had a former child ruined for life by vaccination for his previous refusal, the little one's back and thighs were one mass of black spots, and presented a most shocking appearance. Mr. Jope said 5 cases had been brought under his notice when children had suffered severely after vaccination. One named Perry was in such a condition that it was scarcely possible to recognize it as a human being. Before it was vaccinated, the child was strong and hardy, but now its arm had been cauterized 3 times. The father had recently died, and the widow scarcely could support herself. Yet the medical man had called on her to pay L3, how much ever money that is, for attendance on a child thus ruined. So you see, even if they kill you, you've got to pay them. That's opposition to every business in America, by the way. If they don't do the job, you don't pay. Only the medical profession gets paid for killing, causing disease and disability. I called to see Mr. Bull's child. It was a fearful sight, once a fine plump child wasted to a mere skeleton, and its flesh rotting off its bones. T. Blinkhorn, Walsall, 12th of May, 1873. The wife of James Marston of Newbridge Lane, previously of Heaton Norris, had twins in 1869. They were vaccinated when 13 weeks old. They were vaccinated on Tuesday. On the Friday night, one of them began to cry most pitifully. This continued during the night, and about 9 o'clock next morning, the child died. In the meantime, the medical man who had vaccinated it was sent for. When he arrived, the child was dead. Seeing that the arm in which it had been vaccinated was black from the shoulder to the finger ends, he inquired if the other child was vaccinated at the same time. Being informed that it was, he said he was very sorry, for he never saw finer children, but the other would go in the same way. Surely enough, the second child commenced to cry on Saturday night, and on Monday morning it died. The arm of this child was discolored like the first. Both were buried in one coffin, and the medical man gave a certificate stating that the cause of death was diarrhea. Extract of speech from Mr. Riley reported in Stockport paper, October 17, 1873. Died from diarrhea. Oh my God. Diarrhea is a symptom. It's not a cause of anything. It's not a disease. Vaccination or blood poisoning. Deaths from vaccination and other cases of severe injury. Investigated by Mr. Maurer, Guardian, Gainsborough, and laid before the Gainsborough Board of Guardians November 21, 1876. Case of severe suffering after vaccination. Statement of Mrs. Wilson of Middleton, near Gainsborough, made November 15, 1876. Number 1. My child, Wilby Wilson, was born July the 10th, 1876. Was up to the time of vaccination a perfectly healthy child, and the finest we have had. He was vaccinated October the 9th. The vaccination did not seem to take, but on the 4th day the arm was very much swollen and inflamed, and the child began to be poorly, refusing his food, etc. On the 7th day his face and nose broke out. After that a large swelling appeared under his left ear, with inflammation and irritation extending down his neck to his breast. He suffered very much, but he is now improving, and we hope he will recover. There has been no disease in the home before, at, or since the time of vaccination, and we feel sure that it is nothing but vaccination which has caused its suffering. Statement of Mrs. Scott of Middleton, near Gainsborough, November 15th, 1876. Case number 2, my child Alice Laura Scott was born January the 14th, 1876. Was vaccinated October the 9th, 1876. She was perfectly healthy up to that time. 4 days after her arm began to swell, the swelling extending downwards to her finger ends, and upwards to her neck and across to her breast, to her right arm upon the elbow, of which a very large blister appeared. The inflammation and swelling then extended downwards from her breast to her legs, her whole body becoming purple before death. She died November the 5th, and during the whole of that time seemed to suffer intense pain, crying out terribly whenever touched, and causing us intense suffering in witnessing her pain. She could not have taken cold, as she was never allowed to leave the house. We are all quite healthy, nor has there been any disease in our house since the child was vaccinated. Our opinion is that our child died entirely through the effects of vaccination. Excuse me. And the suffering is just unbearable. But I want to mention something. She said it couldn't have caught cold because they didn't take it outside. In those days, they believed that cold weather caused people to get colds. Statement by Mr. George Parker of Gainsborough, made November 15th, 1876. Case number 3. Charles Cooper Parker was born June 19th, 1876. Was a perfectly healthy child. He was vaccinated on October the 9th. All went well till on the evening of the 26th. His mother, thinking he was not well, took him out of his cradle. She found that he could not bear his side being touched, and on examining discovered the places where he had been vaccinated were running, and that his arm was turning black. That was running sores she's talking about. That's what happened to my daughter, by the way. He appeared to suffer very much all night, and during the next day he turned entirely purple, except his face, and died in the evening. We live at the top of Fountain Hill, a very healthy situation. In other words, you're saying they live in clean hygiene somewhere, not in the poor districts. We have had no disease in our house. The child had not taken cold, nor do we think it was anything but vaccination which killed him. Statement made by George William Woodhouse, November 15th, 1876, number 4 case. My child, John George, was born April 11th, 1876. He had very good health and was as fine a child as need be up to the time of vaccination. He was vaccinated October the 9th, 1876. The pox only rose weak and small, but the doctor said he was satisfied. 14 days after, the child cried very much, and when washed on or handled, could not bear his side touched. Next morning there was a substance under the left arm the size of a walnut. The day following, the inflammation had extended to the top of the shoulder. It spread gradually from day to day, covering the breast and body and reaching down to the fingertips, the whole festering hard and a purple color. Abscesses formed, and 3 blisters rose. These my wife pricked 2 days before death, and a yellow watery fluid exuded. Dr. Rainey saw the child the same day and sent for Dr. Wright to lance the substance. When Dr. Wright came, he said it was useless to lance, as there was no matter. We might, in other words, there was no matter in the sore. We might take a clean needle and prick it all over. It would let the blood out and ease it a little. Dr. Beard, vaccination inspector, called to inquire after our health and surroundings. Our health is good and has been up to the present case. Statement of Mr. Thomas Pickert, November 15th, 1876, case number 5. My child Matilda was born March 12th and was quite healthy and spotless until vaccinated October 9th, 1876. On the 8th day, when shown at the station, the arm was swollen and the inflammation was spreading across the back and chest. Afterwards, an abscess formed at the left armpit, which was constantly rising, separating, and subsiding. I and my wife have had very little rest since the child was vaccinated, and she has suffered fearfully. She is now improving, but the abscess has a very bad appearance. Dr. Wright, the vaccinator, says it's a touch of scarlet fever with her syphilis my child is suffering from. Dr. Rainey's says there is no fever, but all is the result of vaccination. Statement made by George Henderson, Walkeringham, October 26, 1876. Case 6, my son was born June 12th. He was vaccinated October 3rd. And never was there a more healthy child up to that time. 10 days after his arm began to swell, the swelling extending down to his arm to his fingers' ends, which soon became fully double their usual size. They then turned quite purple, and great blisters rose upon them. His right leg then began to swell and got very large and purple and became quite hard. The inflammation then ran up his right side into his right arm across his body and got into his leg and foot, which broke out into blisters. His body was also very much swollen and became so hard and sore that he could not bear us to touch him. His sufferings were very great till within 2 hours of his death, which took place on the 25th of October. Statement by H. Baker of Walkeringham, November 15th, 1876, case number 7. Edwin George Baker was born July 15th and was quite healthy, not having had a quarter of an hour's illness up to vaccination, which was performed twice. The first operation not taking, he was vaccinated again on October 3rd. On the 9th, the doctor visited him and took lymph from his arm. The next day, we found his shoulder swollen, purple, and very much inflamed. The inflammation gradually passed down his arm, reaching his fingers on the 14th. On the 17th, his throat began to be inflamed and he became insensible. The following day, he appeared to be somewhat improved, but at midnight was taken with convulsions. At 2 o'clock in the morning, on putting him into a hot bath, we found his legs and lower part of his body hard, swollen, and purple. No urine had been passed on the previous day. He had convulsions till noon, and then gradually sank, dying at 7 o'clock. The doctor gave us, as the cause of death, retention of urine and inflammation of the kidneys. That's typical of these, well, I don't want to say what I think of them. The child did not appear to have taken colic, nor was there any disease in the house either before or after his vaccination. He took his food as usual and did not, apart from the inflammation, appear to be suffering from any other disease. It is my opinion that the inflammation was caused either by vaccination or by taking the lymph from his arm. And you know, folks, all they've done in this 100 and some years is learned what the minimum lethal dose is, MLD they call it, where they had this pure poison they were putting in these children, and now they've modified it and they've added other stuff to it, so they know just what it'll cause 90% of the time, 95% of the time, and then rarely that it will cause a disease, a death, or disability. They've had a very long time to work out the bugs in this program, is what it amounted to. So now they feel pretty confident that the majority of children will not be harmed, and then they can continue to defraud the entire world. Statement of Mr. William Clark, Walkeringham, November 15th, 1876. Case number 8. Mary Jane Clark was born April 7th, 1876, and was quite well and lively up to the 7th of October when she was vaccinated. About a week after, she began to be very poorly, breaking out in spots all over her body. After they subsided, the shoulder of the arm on which she had been vaccinated began to be very much inflamed, and forming into a large swelling broke. Previous to its breaking, she became very sore from her shoulder to her foot, and her leg from her knee to her foot was very large and inflamed. An abscess then formed upon her ankle, which after gathering 10 days, causing her very great pain, broke, and is at present an open running sore. After the swelling upon her shoulder broke, the inflammation flew to the pit of her arm, and there is now a very large swelling there which we fear will break. Her pain has been very great, and at times she has lain in her cradle day after day without being able to tell whether she was dead or alive. I have no doubt her suffering has been caused by vaccination, and I would rather endure anything than have another child of mine vaccinated. That's an attitude we need to take today. We have had no disease or any of kind in the house either before or since she was vaccinated. In cases 4, 5, and 6, no definite questions were put, but in cases 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8, the following questions were submitted to the parents. When was your child born? Was it healthy up to vaccination? What symptoms followed vaccination? Was there any disease in your house before, at, or after the time of vaccination? Did the child take cold? What, in your opinion, caused the suffering or death of your child? Since taking the above statements, the following letter has been received. It is from the parents of a child who was vaccinated at Walkeringham near Gainsborough, who has since removed to Spalding. That's interesting. They say removed, meaning moved. Case number 9. Dear sir, we write to let you know that our child was healthy before it was vaccinated. She was vaccinated on the 5th of October, 1876, and died on the 31st. Her arm began to swell 10 days after. The swelling went right down to her finger ends, then across her chest and back and down the other arm. When we wanted to move her, she did nothing but scream. She suffered very much, and we are perfectly sure it was nothing else but vaccination which killed her. We think it a sin and a shame to force vaccination and cause parents so much suffering, trouble, and expense. Yours truly, J. Cottle. Dr. J. Netton Radcliffe, who was appointed by the local government board to report on the above cases, in his report, dated 16 December 1876, endeavors to show that vaccination had nothing to do with the deaths of these children, but that the fatal syphilis might have been due to local causes. These cowards, I just don't want to tell you what I think ought to be done to these people. Dr. Garth Wilkerson writes to a member of Parliament on this view of the case as follows. 76 Wimpole Street, Cavendish Square, London, March 30th, 1877. Dear Sir, I thank you for the parliamentary return about vaccination and her syphilis. It involves the most skillful mystification, tending to show that her syphilis always arises from a previous syphilis in the neighborhood, and never from blood poisoning through vaccine lymph. Like Tyndall's materialistic doctrine that all typhoid fever arises from previous typhoid, and that thus typhoid has existed from all eternity. Materialism is like itself in whatever its clay fingers touch. It disregards the evident cause and rummages the parish for occult causes. The truth is, her syphilis may and does arise afresh continually, and vaccination is its most pregnant source. And when it does thus arise, it is capable of propagation to grown-up persons from vaccinated infants as I have ever seen in my practice. Yours faithfully, Garth Wilkerson. Death of 2 children from vaccination. In September of 1854, our first child was born at Swansea, South Wales. He was perfect and seemingly healthy. When he was vaccinated, my wife saw the child from which the matter was taken, an apparently beautiful infant. A neighbor lady had her child vaccinated at the same time from other portions of the same matter. The vaccinator saw both children at the end of a week. Ours had been fretful the last day or two, and the place looked angry and hard. My wife wanted the doctor to take some off, but he said it had not risen enough, and he refused. The lady, not liking the look of her baby's arm, had in the meantime tried a poultice. The doctor said the children were going on all right and that the bad symptoms would die away in time. The next day, the lady's baby died. She told my wife that nothing but vaccination had killed it. Ours continued to get more restless and fretful. No nice pustules forming, but a central dark mark with hard and angry-looking surroundings. On the Sunday, 10 days, his fretfulness increased, and his loins, thighs, and feet, all at the back part, began to get hard. On Monday and Tuesday, these symptoms increased. A warm bath was tried by doctor's advice without effect. He said the vaccination was all right, but could not say what was the matter. Gradually, all the child's back, from the shoulders downwards, got harder, so that the finger would make little or no impression, and on the Wednesday, after lying some hours moaning at times, and with less and less power of motion, he died. These facts are not now recalled for the first time, but even were it so, nature would vouch for their accuracy, as the indelible impression made on a mother by the death under such circumstances of her first child. I have at this present writing taken them down from her own lips. George Marks, Roseville and Maple Road, Penns, S.E., December 20th, 1876. Vaccination and blood poisoning. Extraordinary inquest this day. This afternoon in the police building's Dale Street, Mr. Clark Asenfall, the borough coroner, held an inquest in the body of John Garrity, who was 3 months old and the son of a dock laborer residing in 6th Court, Shawnee Pope Street. The mother of the child was the first witness called. She said that 3 weeks last Tuesday she took the child to the parish doctor in Great Crossshell Street, who vaccinated it. She then took it home and, becoming ill, it died on Friday last. Mr. J.C. Cormick, senior surgeon at the North Dispensary, who saw the child before and after death, described the appearance its body presented. The cause of death was acute blood poisoning, the result of the processes set up by vaccination. Dr. John Sinclair said he vaccinated the child. Similar matter to that which he had used had been employed in the cases of other children. The child, he had no doubt, suffered from her syphilis set up by the vaccination. He agreed with Mr. Cormick as to the cause of its death. Another child vaccinated from the matter used in Garrity's case was now quite well, but had lived to a higher and healthier part of the town. You know, I need to make a comment here. The doctor tells the parent he just killed the child through vaccination. What does he do after that? Say, gee, I'm awfully sorry about that. Have a good day and call me when you need me. I mean, how sick and insane were these people that allowed this to go on? Mr. James Penn Harris, surgeon, agreed with the observations of Mr. McCormick and Dr. Sinclair. Immediately on the conclusion of the hearing of the evidence of the Garrity inquest, Mr. Asenfall held an investigation as to the death of Owen Highland, 4 months old, the son of a laborer residing in Addison Street. Mary Highland, the mother of the child, deposed that she had it vaccinated by Dr. Sinclair 3 weeks ago and that it died last week. The coroner, having summed up, the jury returned a verdict in each case, stating the opinion that the children died from the effects of paremia consequent upon recent vaccination skillfully performed and from a good source, but that what were the precise causes leading to the blood poisoning, the medical evidence did not enable them, the jury, to say. Do you understand, listener, what's going on? When they gave the evidence, it all boiled down to this. we vaccinated the child died, but you can't prove the vaccination caused the death. Is that not what they said with all vaccines? Is that not what they said with the polio deaths in the 1950s? Is that not what they say today? You need to understand this so that you can fight this with your power and your knowledge and your instincts, rather than listening to these morons telling you you can't prove it when they have never proved anything about preventing disease with this blood poisoning system that makes them a fortune. I'm sorry, I get riled up with this stuff. Cases recorded by Dr. J. Garth Wilkerson in his essay on compulsory vaccination. Miss Edith Hutchinson of Kensington was vaccinated by the late eminent Dr. Joseph Lorraine. The arm swelled enormously and was hard like wood. After a month it subsided, and then a putrid thrush occurred, which disappeared after some weeks. The disease was next transferred to the abdomen and its lymphatic system, and she died of great purulent collections in its cellular tissues, the matter putrescent voided by the bowels. I attended the later stages of the case with Dr. L. Vaccination, careful, conscientious vaccination, did it as plainly as fire burns. I give this case again in Mrs. H.'s own words. My dear Dr. Wilkinson, the dear child was in perfect health in May of 1863, but as smallpox was prevalent and our household being vaccinated, she was subjected to the process. Through the operation had been performed upon her and had taken when she was 4 months old. Within a few days of vaccination in May of 1863, she being then nearly 6 years old, was attacked with inflammation of the lymphatic glands of the arms to so severe an extent that her arms were immensely swollen and so heavy and hard that each arm had to be supported in a sling. Her sufferings for 10 days were very great, at the end of which time her arms gradually resumed their natural appearance. But within a few weeks, the poor child was prostrated by an attack of epiphyseal ulceration of the mouth, which was of a most distressing character from the peculiar offensive odor emitted from the gums. The dear child was more or less delicate ever after, and in the following June enlargement of the abdominal glands and the mesenteric disease set in, her life being terminated by a succession of abscesses in the bowels. In July of 1864, the doctor who attended her telling me that the glandular disease had been coming on for some months. I felt then, and still do feel convinced, that her system was poisoned by the introduction of the vaccine matter, for she had never had a spot or swelling of any kind before, nor had there been a previous case of mesenteric disease in our family. Ever, my dear Dr. Wilkinson, believe me, yours most sincerely, S. Hutchinson. And you know, on the other side of the coin, it's very simple. You have a healthy child, you poison it with vaccinations, and it dies or gets sick. You know what cause it is. It's cause and effect. These people who vaccinate, who make their money that way, who defend this system, will tell you that A doesn't, if A is followed by B, it doesn't mean B is caused by A. But common sense tells you that it did cause it, no matter whether they can prove it legally, scientifically, or any other way. And that is your strength. The three stages in this case are a linked chain of consequences uncoiling from the vaccination. The vaccination itself, poisonous lymph, producing poisonous lymph. The enormous swelling of the cellular tissues and consequently of all the tissues of the arm, the cellular tissues being the great plane at the end of the whole lymphatic system. The universal lymph plane and all the lymphatic vessels and lymphatic glands of the body stand in the relation of centers to the cellular tissue as the great circumference. Effects in the cellular tissue are reflected in intimate effects in the vital lymphatics. It is a great arena of transference of fluids, and if you disease it, of transference of diseases. It runs into the depths of every organ in the body, and a spark of poison in its skin may soon be a devouring fire of poison in its mesentery. You know, I'm not sure of all these words, but I'm telling you what they're saying is when they put that poison in the body, it just travels everywhere. And where it poisons the worst parts of the brain or the spinal cord or wherever, that's where the symptoms show up. He goes on to say the next stage, the malignant thrush, was no doubt the index of commencing destruction in the lymphatic system of the abdomen. The center of the vaccination was reached. The abscesses in the abdomen were the end of the vaccinatory deed. Verdict, death by vaccination. One last one here. We've got another case. My coachman's child was vaccinated and took with it her syphilis, which overspread the body. The mother who was nursing it took the syphilis, and both nearly died of it. I assert that this result of too long and all but fatal illnesses was in poor man's house due to vaccination, and consequently due to Parliament. That is true. Blame it on the legislators, because these are the morons that are passing these laws. This morning, February 27, 1872, a poor woman, Mrs. T, brought in her baby. Her words, vaccinated last September. A fat, strong boy till he was done. Never well since, wasting away. Arm never has got well. I examined and saw a similar place on forehead and throat. I saw them. There could not be a stronger child than this was before. 3 days afterwards, he came out with something which the doctor said had nothing to do with vaccination, and there's your denials again. She is now being summoned to have a second baby done. This baby died of convulsions in the night of March 10th. The vaccinating doctor's certificate ran, died of congestion of the brain during teething. My certificate would have been died of convulsions, the product of inanition and nervous exhaustion caused by mesenteric disease directly caused by vaccination. See what a different statistic would be gathered from two different views. As I said before, there are many, many books out there that no longer probably exist. These are very rare and hard to find. These were just a few cases. There were literally thousands, tens of thousands, and hundreds of thousands over the years that have been covered up, denied, alibied away, lied about, and it goes on today. This is where your modern doctors and drug people have learned all these excuses and alibis, knowing that they worked before and they work now. But one day they will stop working. I'm going to give you a part 3 of this book on the next audio CD. It's about the law, and we're going to get some insights into that. In the meantime, share this information with everyone else, because it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that people have been suffering disease, disability, and death from vaccinations from the very beginning, and they are suffering today, and the same alibis, lies, and excuses they're using today, they copped from those who use those alibis, excuses, and lies 150 years ago. Thank you for listening to this.
And they used Edward Jenner. Product of disease will prevent disease. Taking pus from a sick person, put it in a cow. Taking the cow pus, put it into a healthy person. We call that insane practice, prevention. When I bought this book 15, 20, 25 years ago, whenever it was, I got so goddamn mad. These scumbags. I wouldn't say what I thought. And I won't say it today, but I think it, and you know what I'm thinking. You know, I've got the proof now. Jonas Salk and Tommy Francis and all these guys, John Enders, that they lied out of their teeth in 1955 about the vaccine in their official report. No, they told the media, the world, that the Salk vaccine was 80% in preventing polio. But in their report, 500-page report, they buried and they said vaccine was never meant to protect, just to measure an unsigned product. Then they said in another chapter, there is no way to tell if a vaccine can cause a disease or not. These people need to be prosecuted. I was one of the first people to find this insane practice out. And I was out there by myself for many, many years fighting. And I'm still out there. I'm the only one that's really done my homework. And tell you my book, I got my book. It's got all this stuff listed in it. You can get it on Amazon by putting my name, Jim Dandy O'Kelly. You should get a copy because you're going to need it, if not now, later. So, I'll see you on the next video.